Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel and welcome back to another video of checking on the current state of Deadlock. This will be for March 2025 and the main topic for this review is going to be the brand new map rework that Valve released at the end actually at the end of February they released this update. However, I would like to sort of say this for future videos as well, doing reviews on the current state, is that I would like to give it some time rather than just releasing a video like a week or a few days after a patch, like going over it, because everyone else is going to do that. Every other creator or streamer or whatever is gonna just talk about the actual content of the patch, but I would like to just take time to not only gather my own opinions but then look at the community's opinions on how the overall patch and update works, right? Because I think initially everyone's kind of excited that they've changed the map or whatever they do in the future, but over time you can gather your opinions more, whether you like it, whether you dislike it, are there problems with it, are there things that's good with it and stuff. So even though it released in February, and you know it's been about a month now since that's come out, there still might be a major patch at within the last 10 days of March. I'm recording this on the 20th of March, but I think in general I'd like to take some time between a release of a major patch to the next one. So if there's big gaps between the videos, then you can just sort of see why there. But let's go into detail about the map rework and say the general consensus of the update. So of course they did change the map for Deadlock from being a 4-lane map with 2 solo lanes on the both left and right sides and 2 duos in the middle, to 3 lanes, meaning that there's no more solo lanes and it's entirely just duo lanes. So you got 2 duos in the middle and on the sides as well. When this first released, I kind of like that solo lanes were removed, because personally I didn't, even when going into solo lanes, it kind of led to a few things, and it led to gameplay either being sort of very one-sided depending on your matchup. If you're playing more of a support hero that didn't do much damage and stuff like that, or a character that kind of needs a little bit of farm to actually start to get going, like is better in the mid and late game, you might suffer more than someone who is just very good in lane, or someone who's good early game, right? So if you're like playing a weaker character early on, for example, I mean, you could just say, so people say Hayes is sort of like weak early on, she needs to level up her passive, her free, she needs more items of Violet and stuff like that. But then if you verse like someone who's really good and strong in solo, like Mirage, and they're a decent player at Mirage, you might just stomp the lane, right? I'm just sort of saying that in terms of solo lanes, it did allow for disparities in hero level, in power levels and stuff, which definitely led to more snowballing coming out of solo lanes if that was the case. If that didn't happen, where one hero was just better than the other and they were decent, you could stomp, it just led to either people in the solo lanes basically just having a standstill and making it so that people were just playing very safe in the lane. They didn't get kills in the lane, they were just sort of trading health and trading minions and basically being at the same amount of souls, right? And no tower damage is being pushed much or anything like that until someone from the duo lane or whatever came over and ganked and then became a 2v1. That's kind of the problem I had with solo lanes. It just felt kind of uninteractive, because you couldn't leave, because then they would just push your lane and get the Guardian for free. So you had to stay there and protect it until someone came over and helped, or the enemy came over and killed you and took your lane, or unless you were just better than the opponent. But I think most times, more than not, it led to either very one-sided things or just very stagnated lanes. So the removal of solo lanes is a thing I appreciate. And it's also good for like maybe newer players that don't really, or like, you know, if you're playing a character that is not as strong, then solo lane and being forced to be put in solo isn't going to help. You're going to get stomped, especially if you're against someone else, your opponent, who might be better than you. So, but however, the trade-off is now it's all duo lanes, and the lanes are much more spread apart. So on one hand, I like solo being removed. However, it's had the consequence that because there's only 3 lanes, the distance between the lanes is much bigger, making it so that ganking is not impossible, but you're kind of like throwing away your lane in some regards if you do try and gank. So if you had, if you're on the left lane, like say you're on the yellow lane, and it's 2v2, and you want to go help mid lane because they're having a little bit of a tough time, they're slightly behind. If you want to leave your lane and go to mid, your lane partner on yellow is going to have to deal with a 2v1. They're going to get pushed back to the Guardian. If they die, that Guardian's gone, right? They're going to take the advantage that you've left and are going to push. So for the most part, you kind of just have to stay in your lane for however long until the Guardian goes down. Whether you get the Guardian and then the enemy can leave because they don't really have any Guardian to defend, or you can leave or whatever and help. So it kind of turns into who can destroy the Guardian the fastest, which, especially in sort of lower ranks and whatever like that, it can lead to people just getting kills and just trading like in solo lane before, just being like a stalemate until someone else just, you know, wins their lane and they destroy the Guardian and then comes over. So it does become quite stagnant. I've been able to sit in lane for like 15 minutes because no one's actually destroyed any Guardians on the map. Or if they have, they've not come over to help and they've gone to farm in the jungle and stuff. Or they've gone to the other lane. So I've like sat in lane for 15 minutes for the most part, just sort of trading back and forth and whatnot. And it does kind of get stale in that regard because of you're not allowed to gank as much. Even though you have characters that can be good at ganking or like can have abilities like Grey Talon's ultimate, his owl can fly across and maybe kill someone or do big damage to help out. Mirage's teleport can get quick, but even then, you're like, you know, say if Mirage teleports, you're not in the lane anymore. You could get pushed. Your teammate can get pushed. So for the most part, it's kind of led to very stagnant lanes. But after that, it's also very harder to push Walker objectives because there's one less Walker on the map and one less Guardian, of course. They changed the flex slots around because of this. So instead of needing, I think it's 2 Walkers before for the flex slot or something like that. I can't remember exactly, but they changed, so it's now either you get 1 Walker for the first, well, it's 2 Guardians for the first, and then 1 Walker for the second, and then all Walkers for the third. The base one where 2 base Guardians and a Shrine has been kept, but because of that, flex slots have been removed, and a lot of time people don't really know. It's much harder to push solo unless the entire enemy team is trying to push 1 Walker on your side of the map and you're on the other side. It's going to be a lot harder to push because 3 lanes is easier to defend than 4. You know, even if in the old 4 lane map, you could have, you know, everyone pushing on each of the lanes, you wouldn't be able to defend. If you had, for example, you had, you know, the old layout where it's like 1 person on the side lanes and then 2 duos in the middle, you would have to sort of match that sort of thing of like trying to defend, you know, 1-on-1. But if like more people pushed one side, like the left side, and then maybe 1 person came on the other, like you're trying to defend the bigger, you know, you don't want to have like a 2 people defending against 4 people, but then, you know, you could have someone, it allowed for more macro play and individual play in pushing Walkers. But now it's more like having less objectives. It's much easier to defend, but it's much harder to attack. So those flex slots become very hard, especially if you have a team that isn't like isn't good enough to really kind of capitalize on opportunities and pushing and stuff like that. Especially with the fact that they've also added a ton more farm. With the removable of a lane, you just have a single lane going down the middle of the map. They've added a lot more farm and a lot more jungle camps in between the lanes. They reduced the overall amount of souls that these camps give, and they also reworked the Sinner Sacrifice machines, the ones you punch and stuff, so they can give golden statue buffs. If the lights on the top reach the end, you can probably see it in the gameplay at some points. But they've made it so neutral camps, there's more of them, but they give less. However, this had led to, in the sort of early sort of days and weeks or so of this new update, it has caused a very farm heavy meta, where pretty much a ton of characters, regardless of what they were building, even if they build a little bit of spirit, they were building Cold Front. Cold Front is a decent IM in general against, like, it slows people down, it does a decent amount of damage, it's cheap as well, it's only a tier 2 IM, and you usually build it on characters that built a decent amount of spirit, like Calico, Lash, Yamato, Pocket, ones that would get quite close to you because it's a close range ability. But characters that wanted to help, a lot of characters were now picking it up because of the amount of farm, because it did 2 times damage to camp. So even if you built a decent amount of spirit damage, it could clear camps at ease. You could wipe out the small camps in one hit, or medium camps as well, or do a significant damage to the heavy camps. Characters that even still were very good at farming, like Seven, for example. He can do a lot of damage with his free, with his lightning ball. Even then, you could, before people using his ult to kill the big red camps as well. But people taking Cold Front on him, like, just to even farm even faster, to a point where they've now just removed that extra damage, the 2 times damage on Cold Front, because it became such a farm heavy meta that a lot of time people will just farm in the entire game. And people still kind of do it now. People just farm constantly, and even when they get advantages and kills and things like that, they don't push objectives. It's just led to very stale games and very longer games. They tried to counteract this by increasing spawn timers, so at certain times during the match, like 20 minutes, the respawn timer is increased to previously, or like 30 minutes is increased, or something like this. So the fact if you die later on, if the game does go long, your respawn timer is going to be higher, so it's more detrimental, and it gives the enemy team or your team more of an advantage to push objectives and stuff like that. So in theory, it's like they're trying to do small fixes for the most part, but I think in general it's just way harder to push objectives than it used to be, and it encourages more team play. But if your team doesn't know how to play, if you're playing in the lower ranks or whatever like that, and your team doesn't communicate, it's so much harder. There's so many games that I've had recently where it's just we get even a few kills, we don't push, or like entire games where we don't get a single walker down, and we're trying to fight back against teams that do push our walkers, and they've got all our walkers and they're pushing our base, and we haven't taken a single walker. It's like, I mean, at that point it's very hard to come back, even on the old one, I guess, but still it would have been relatively easier on the 4-lane map to sort of come back. I think that's one also major thing, other than the lanes being kind of stagnant. The comeback mechanics are a lot harder on the 3-lane map. The urn is still the same. The urn, the map is still the same size. The urn hasn't changed at all. However, mid-boss is no longer like it's like the museum it had at the big central building that had a lot of entrances and a lot of ways to sort of counter it. Every time people were taking mid-boss, you could always try and contest it. There was a lot of entrances, you could go in and try and take it. However, with the fact that there is a lane now in the center of the map, mid boss has been put 2 levels underneath. So you have the ground, like the normal like lane, the ground level, and then you have a layer below which has a bunch of boxes and gold statues, and below that is the mid boss. And mid boss only has basically 4 entrances now. You have 2 big staircases on like sort of middle, not in the mid, not directly attached to the mid lane, but like sort of further out. And then you have 2 ropes that go down to the first floor with the boxes, and then 2 drop down holes into mid boss. Because of how sort of more time it takes to access mid boss, it also means that contesting mid boss is way harder, especially if the enemy is taking mid boss and they have the blue lane pushed. You don't have a way to go to contest. Whereas in the 4 lane, you had, if they were taking mid boss, there's a chance that you had the 2 lanes in the middle, which was blue and green. If they had blue pushed up but your green was like midway, you could take green and then get there. But now if they have that middle lane pushed, you don't really have a zip line to get there. You got to run, and by the time you get there, you've also got down 2 different holes and a long staircase. It makes contesting mid boss so much harder. So in terms of that comeback, it's a lot harder to do in terms of that regard. So in general, I think the new map, in my overall opinions of the new map, I like their attempt, because it is still early. They're going to attempt to do new things, and I'm sure with time and adjustments and stuff like that, that maybe 3 lanes might be good. Like I like the visual style that they did, but that's, it's just art. But I think in terms of gameplay, this 4 lanes was overall better, in my opinion, than the 3 lane map. And I'm sure they could do some adjustments, like they could have, I've seen concepts, people come up in the community, like you still have a single lane in the middle, but you have zip lines leading to, they have 2 zip lines that lead to the right and left side jungles, just for better rotations, to get to mid boss or something like that. It's also addressing the camps, and well, I think camps for the most part are alright, as they have reduced them and stuff like that. As well, they increased to the Sin of Sacrifice machines, the vending machines. They're very strong, so like stealing them from the enemy is important because they can give a ton of buffs. They give less souls, I think, now in general. However, the 3 gold statue buffs, of course, they scale further into the game. They did reduce them in a balance patch. They are very good to steal, and over the course of the game, if you're even taking your own ones or taking the enemies, you're going to get so many stats and so many buffs just from these machines alone, that they're probably the priority, even what you want to steal. They're also faster to steal than just general camps, depending on who you are, because everyone can heavy melee punch, right? Whereas stealing a medium camp or a heavy camp as a hero that can't farm, like can't kill these camps well, it's going to be more beneficial just to steal a vending machine, a Sin of Sacrifice, than the jungle camps, right? So that's the map. I prefer 4 lanes than the 3 lane currently, but with adjustments that may change. Of course, they've also done a lot of other things. There's been other general changes. For example, they've actually updated Abram's player model. His player model was briefly sort of leaked. It wasn't officially in the game, but if you went through and used like console commands, you could actually get this new Abrams model before. I think they had it before Christmas when Mirage got his like slightly updated model, but this is like a whole new actual model. Like it's very kind of up to date, and it does also look like one of the more finalized models, as Abrams might be like the mascot to the game. Maybe Hayes or Seven might also contest, as they're also, Seven's very popular in terms of players. Hayes is on some of the art, but Abrams is on the main menu, so they might keep Abrams as like the main character / mascot of the game. So him having like a more finalized model makes sense, but he's got a whole new kind of his clothes are more detailed. He has more effects, like his tome, his book has unique effects and animations and stuff to it as well. They added interactions between heroes. Previously, they were just in the files and the one not implemented. If you've seen other some videos on YouTube or elsewhere where they've had characters interact with each other, and they were intended for like pre-game stuff, some of them have been added to the game now, where if you're on the same lane as someone that has this interaction, for example, Lash and Abrams, just for example, Lash is just like, I don't know what they say, to be honest, off the top of my head. But they have interactions. Before it was not available, now it's available. It adds story, it adds character, and I appreciate that a lot, because this world and these characters are going to be very good when everything is finalized later down the line, which I still imagine is quite a ways off for Deadlock to be officially released and finished. I would imagine about maybe a year or two away still for a full finalized version, like 1.0 version of Deadlock. Any additional changes that were added, actually not additional changes, but I'm just say the new heroes and how they've come along with Calico, Holiday, Sinclair and Viper. They've done a few nerfs more to Holiday. She no longer has a stun on a jump pad, and I think for the most part, from what I see, Holiday is balanced. She still has, you know, knock-ups and has a lot of stuns and stuff like that, but is not as oppressively overpowered as she was before. She still takes some time to learn, and she's still very strong, but she's not as strong as she was before. Calico is the menace. Calico is probably the strongest character in the game right now, probably definitely overtuned. Just the amount of bursts she can do a lot of damage with her bombs. The slash gives a ton of instant damage if you hit it with a ton of sustain. Ava the cat, being able to run around silently, basically, not being able to detect it on the map, run through boxes, farm a bunch of souls, especially in a map that has less like rotation options. Be able to run as fast as you can in Ava is, you know, a big thing. She was already strong before. She's probably gotten even better with the map change, because you can just run around so fast with Ava, and her ult is still very strong. Sinclair, I think he's had a few changes to him. For the most part, he's still a strong hero, but not as strong. He still takes some time to get used to. He's strong in lane and may potentially still fall off later in the game. And Viper has still not had any changes since before, still suffering due to the gun damage nerfs. But I think in general, Viper, very weak early game. If you manage to get absolutely fed and farmed as Viper, she can do a lot. But even still, she still kind of suffers, and overall other characters are probably better. And it's much easier and more fun to play than Viper. I tried Viper, hurt my hand trying to play it, because you've got to constantly dash and slide the entire game, and doing the same motion of like jumping and sliding every single time for like 40 minutes, half an hour, hurts your hand. So yeah, she's not really that fun to play for me. Yeah, other than just like the cold front nerf, Haze's ult got nerfed, so she no longer does spirit damage in her ult, which has kind of, I would say, not drastically, but it has definitely affected her in terms of how strong her ult is, as it purely just does gun damage now. For the most part, I think this patch, this update of the map rework, it's different. Of course, we're going to get very drastic changes with these updates now, as they previously stated before. But I think overall opinion of right now and the time that I've taken from when the update came out to now, I would prefer 4 lanes, as it had more agency and in individual play, and more agency in pushing objectives, and it allowed for more comeback, especially with mid boss. And depends on how they go in the future, whether they bring back 4 lanes, whether they have 4 lanes is either become a permanent thing, or is it going to be a side mode? Is 3 lanes going to be the main thing, or is it going to be a side mode? Who really knows at this point? I'm sure they're just testing it, and they'll give it a few months or a year to test how well 3 lanes goes compared to 4, and we just have to wait. Time will tell on overall what they will do. So this video covering all those sort of things, and thank you for watching. There may be another update before the end of March, who knows? It's still kind of early. We're about 3 weeks past since the map rework update at the end of February, so there may not be one for the end of March, but they could always do one for once every month. But if it's not one before the end of March, then we'll cover the update in April. If there is a big update, I mean, if there's any other small changes before then, I will put in the description as an update, as I did before my previous one, where they've changed how Sinclair works slightly. Anything significant I'll put in the description. So yeah, thank you for watching, thank you for the support on the previous videos as always, and I will see you guys in the next video. Goodbye.